Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the pod where we chat, argue, and wax poetic about the movies that we love, hate, or that are simply worth talking about. All movies have something to say, and we enjoy trying to analyze what they capture. Welcome to the Shatter After. How is everybody doing out there? I am Brandon Alvarado, the Scarlet fan here, and I'm so excited again to be back for another take of the Shatter After podcast, part of the Novice Cinephile Network, where we talk and analyze our favorite movies to death. We talk about our favorite scenes, favorite characters, themes, and we try and recapture the shatter that occurs after, I don't know what I'm doing, we leave the theater where we go to a bar, go to a restaurant, and chat about movies with our friends, and we analyze them to death to talk about why that moment in the theater was amazing. We're doing the old movies, we're doing the new movies. Today in particular, we're going way back, and we're talking about Blade Runner, the final cut. Directed by Ridley Scott, inspired by the amazing book "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep" by Philip K. Dick. Spanned an amazing franchise and world that has enamored sci-fi fans for generations. And of course, I'm not here to talk about this movie on my own. I'm here with the Shatter After crew. I got my friend Mike Thomas. What's up, man? Still muted.
Still muted every freaking time, man.
You know what? I think you should stop editing it and just make it your thing. You're still mute, Mike. I don't know. It's like
Right.
I think
I'm just excited to talk about Blade Runner for its 40th anniversary. This is awesome.
it's 40 years.
40 years, 82.
Yeah, it was 82. And it's funny because do you guys know when this book came out? The book, it's because it's not based on the book, it's inspired by the book. You know what year this book came out? It was 1969. So,
Nice.
like Philip K. Dick, he's a beast among sci-fi writers. I mean, it's amazing. So, Mike Thomas said hello. Isak, what's up, man?
So this is the third version of the 2049 version of the...
This is
Oh,
the
yeah.
Mars. This is the Mars accepted version in the eastern colonies of the third galaxy. That's what this
Yeah.
is.
Is this the Philip K. Richard cut?
Exactly.
Exactly.
You know, kids today keep talking about the Snyder cut, but this is where it's at, y'all. The final cut of Blade Runner.
It's not the director's cut. It's not the theatrical cut. It's the final cut. You got unicorns, man. So, Isak, you excited to talk Blade Runner?
I am.
I appreciate the awkward silence before your response.
I was muted, so...
Tip your hat to the captain. Hey, that's Mike's thing. And of course, our good friend, Landon Beall. What's up, bro?
Thank you for having me, everybody. It's good to be.
Yes, yes. I think I heard through the grapevine that this piece of cinema is somewhat special to you. So I think we're going to have a blast tonight.
It is quite special to me. I mean, science fiction in general is
Right.
very special to me. But this movie, I have an interesting history. I've only ever seen the final cut, so I'm not
Interesting.
soured on the previous versions. However, it is quite a movie, so I'm looking forward to discussing.
So how about we kick off? You mentioned a little bit about the different versions and your relationship with the film. Normally in the chatter after, we like to start with our first interaction with the film and what this possible, if you rewatched it before the recording, what that brought back or if it holds. And if you were to think back, when was the first because think about it, this movie is older than all of us. Like it's kind of nuts. So what was that first time you watched Blade Runner? Why did you watch it?
So I had, of course, heard all the things about you need to see Blade Runner. To see Blade Runner, it's a classic.
Mhm.
And at the time, well, actually, just this past year, the town where I grew up in had a video store. It's called Popcorn Video. Popcorn Video, you could go and get 5 movies for 5 nights, $5. DVD, Blu-ray didn't matter. They eventually had to up their prices when inflation happened. It was 5 days, 7 nights, $7, I think is what they changed it to.
Still great.
Yeah. So it was a great deal. They eventually had to close just because who goes to the stores? But their selection of stuff was incredible. Behold, I went there. They had Blade Runner, got it. It was a 2-disc version of the final cut, and the way Popcorn Video did things is when it was on the shelf, it was in a rubber band. It was 2 discs. Both discs in the set.
Yep.
So I rented it and took it home, watched it. Don't remember what other movies I watched it with that rental set, but I remember the experience very clearly. And I put it in, and I kind of left my very first viewing of Blade Runner feeling just kind of whelmed. Like it wasn't one of those movies that overwhelmed me. It wasn't one of those movies that I felt super, super strongly about, because it is very clear with the message it's trying to tell in this cut. Now, I realize a lot of other people have seen other versions and have very strong opinions about the ending being different in those versions. But this version, is a very solid movie, very well, and absolutely.
Sweet. Isak Wolf, Blade Runner, first time. How was that?
Well, first of all, I don't think don't think I have seen Final Cut until now. I do think I saw the director's cut at first. But that aside, no matter what cut it is, it's a great movie. It's a great science fiction movie that actually, I know that this is semi-off topic, but has influenced a lot of
Not off
sci-fi
topic.
anime.
Go on.
Sci-fi anime.
Not off topic.
Sort of like Parasite, Ghost in the Shell. No, it's sort of Parasite. What's with the police crew with the
Psychopaths.
Psychopaths. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
There is even a old school anime movie that I can't recall the name for, and that pisses me off. That even recreated a specific scene from this movie in that anime movie, which just comes to show how influential and this movie was, at least in Japan, and you can also see it influential to some degree in other science fictional media, even to this day, I would argue.
Agreed. Mr. Thomas, talk to us.
So, Blade Runner and I wouldn't say it's very interesting, but it's a strange relationship. I tried to watch, I think it was like 2016 or so, I tried to watch Blade Runner, and I tried to watch the original cut, and I just couldn't get into it. So I actually messaged Landon and like, hey, what version of this movie should I watch? And he said, watch the final cut. And I've never had an experience where I've watched the same movie twice and walked away just sitting here like, I can't believe this was supposed to be the same story, the same film. I love the final cut. It's a lot more nuanced than the theatrical. It's more engaging. I got sucked into the world a bit better with this version of the film. And so watching it, this is probably like my second or third time watching Blade Runner for this review, and I just fell in love with it. I always appreciated the movie, but this is the first time where I actually sat down. I knew everything that was going to happen. I had an understanding of what the themes were, and so it all just clicked. And so I had a blast watching Blade Runner this final time. And yeah, I just got into it like in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe. So I'm fairly new, hence the name novice cinephile to this movie. But I love it. I love Blade Runner. And I can't wait to talk about the sequel sometime in the future.
Awesome.
I want to add one thing to what you just said. The second time I watched the final cut was absolutely better than the first time.
Yeah.
Because when you're watching it the first time, you're soaking in the story, you're soaking in what's happening. The second time you watch it, you're soaking in
What it's trying to say.
beats. Yeah, you're soaking in that psychological side.
Yep.
This is a very psychological movie, but it doesn't present itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very, very good at it.
Mm-hmm. So I watched the original. I think I don't remember. It's been so long since I think I think that I've seen all the cuts. I think this might be the second time I watched the final cut. I am not sure. I really do enjoy this film a lot. I love it. I love it. I love it more. I love it. I'm gonna say it. I can't find other words. But what I like about this film is, I got distracted by my own excitement. So this film is so dense, and I think that's one of the best ways to describe it, because it's a dense film, not just in terms of story, especially when you watch it more than once, but in terms of its cinematography, in terms of the lore, the world, everything that it's trying to establish. It was a film that was ahead of its time. Like, all the practical effects are phenomenal. And of course, the final cut and the AC remasters that they've done to the film really bring out such a clean cut version of the visuals that you're like, there's no way this was made in 1982. You know what I mean? Like you question that, okay, this is actually Ridley Scott doing, which again, you got to think about. Ridley Scott is the same person that brought us Alien. And Alien is another film full of practical effects and imaginary cinematography and effects that feels, it doesn't feel outdated even now. Like, some things do look outdated, especially when you start seeing the behind the scenes things behind them, right? Because, like, very simple things, the guy in the suit, how weird the guy looks in the suit, like the Xenomorph suit. But it all holds up very well because the story is so well taught, so well presented, and all that. But this, the first time I watched it, I found it interesting because I knew it was important for cinema, so I watched it. It was one of those. There was a period in my life where I was just watching movies that were important to cinema, so I kind of that was one of the times that I watched it. Now, watching it now, I wanted to get a different angle because I've heard, okay, this is based on a book. I want to know what that is. So I read, there's a graphic novel version of the book that inspired Blade Runner, because I thought that this was an adaptation, but the film isn't. It is actually an inspired work, right? And it's based on this book. If anybody wants to grab it, it's actually really cheap on Amazon. It's called
Do Androids
Dream of Electric Sheep? And it's like 200 pages. It's not that long. But it's a great book. Weird. And to think Philip K. Dick was like the sci-fi guru of the last 50 years. Like, we're still adapting his works. And it's funny that Isak mentioned Psychopaths and other animes, and it's like Philip K. Dick is the mind behind Total Recall. Philip K. Dick is the mind behind Minority Report. Like, all of those things is Philip K. Dick. And what I love about Blade Runner, having read the book now, and like this new experience of rewatching it, is the fact that Blade Runner, it's its own thing. It's not the book. Like, there's a lot of key things that are changed. And I would even say, those that know, I think everybody here, or most of us, know what Cowboy Bebop is. and know the importance of Shinichiro Watanabe.
3, 2, 1, let's go.
And
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
um, and one of the interesting things about Cowboy Bebop is that a lot of people always, once you watch the anime and you fall in love with it, you're like, oh wait, where's the manga? And then you find out, no, there's no manga. It's an anime only show, and everything manga related came after. It's like, what? Yeah, Shinichiro Watanabe developed it from the scratch. Like, oh my god. So this is the kind of film that you want to find those things, but there's nothing like it in literature. Like, the only things that you've seen that have the Blade Runner name come from the world that Ridley Scott birthed out of the inspiration of Philip K. Dick. Like, in the book, you'll find Rachel, you'll find Rick Deckard, and you'll find Harry Bryant, and you'll find a couple of other things. But I like how they deal with different questions and different stories and stuff like that. Even the term Blade Runner is not in the book. Blade Runner is the term that he created. The term replicant is a term they created. So he created its own thing. And I like the fact that this is a milestone and also a foundation for sci-fi cinema. And like, there's no way that in a conversation of humanity, a conversation of what the soul is and what makes a human human, and all those conversations that you would have in sci-fi literature in general, Blade Runner is a foundation because of the themes that it touches and how it approaches them. Also to say that one of the reasons I watched the movie originally was because I heard that Blade Runner 2049 was coming out. And I don't know, Denis Villeneuve is such a phenomenal filmmaker that when you find out that he's making a movie, what are you doing? Okay, what can I watch to prepare, right? And no, we're not talking about the sequel now, but do we agree on this idea that Blade Runner is a foundational film for sci-fi cinema? And I think you mentioned it, Landon. Do we agree to this across the board, or not necessarily, or am I hyping it too much?
I 1000% do agree. And not to linger on this too much because we haven't talked about the sequel. Is there anyone here who thinks that this is better than the sequel, or that the sequel is better? Because when you're talking about foundations, it is very interesting how 2049 feels so built on this foundation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I am a little curious. We don't necessarily have to talk about it, but I am curious. Someone thinks one is better than the other because they are both good because of this movie's foundation.
That's a good thing that you bring it up, because when it comes to Blade Runner, right? People that do the research do androids dream of electric sheep, but throughout the years, there's so many things that reference Blade Runner. Like, even a show like Altered Carbon, it's a pseudo Blade Runner spinoff. You know what I mean? Like, on Netflix, that's like you could say it's one of those, like, what they call spiritual successors. Like, it has a lot of that.
Even Cowboy Bebop, you mentioned earlier, it has that DNA in there.
Yes, it has that DNA of understanding what it is to exist and what that means. Especially with the character of Spike. Like, Spike and Rick Deckard have that stoic kind of like personalities, right? Yeah. Of people not really clear of what their role is supposed to be, or how their role in society is blurred because of life and with the things that they have to do. But I think it's hard to say. That's at least my opinion, which I want to hear everybody else's. It's hard for me to say that it's better, because I just see it as Denis playing in that sandbox. And that's why I love it, because Denis understands the rules of that world. Denis understands the rules of the characters. Denis understands the rule of the community that loves it, and that's why that film works. And I think that everyone involved understood what it was to go back to that same San Francisco 30 years later, right? I do find it funny that the first one takes place in 2019, which is when 2049 came out.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
you did say San Francisco. You mean Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, well, that's where it takes place. San Francisco, that's the city.
Okay.
I believe San Francisco.
Or-
I think it's
but-
San Francisco where it takes place.
Okay, I thought it was Los Angeles.
I may be thinking about the book. I don't know.
I could be wrong about this. So
Now-
I'm curious what Isaac's able to find out.
Now, Mike, do you think it's better, or do you? What are your thoughts? Because it's a valid argument to have now.
Do I think 2049 is better than the original Blade Runner? Yes, but I want to preface that statement by saying the last few episodes we've done for the Chatter After, you look at Marvel's The Avengers, you look at The Godfather, you look at Top Gun, are all fantastic movies that led to movies I like better. And so when you say it's a foundational film, yeah, it changed the game. And I love Blade Runner, but like you were saying earlier, Brandon, Denny was able to play in that sandbox and make something beautiful, something masterful. But he couldn't do that if the original film didn't exist, if the final cut itself didn't exist.
That's what I was getting at right there.
Right.
Yeah. So like you look at The Avengers, a movie we talked about at length about how much we loved it and how much it went over budget. But I love
You're never gonna let that go, aren't you?
It's not gonna happen.
never. I love
Savvy.
Infinity War and Endgame way more than I love the first Avengers film.
Right.
But those movies don't happen without the Avengers.
Correct.
So that's where I sit.
I think the best way to put it, and specifically what you're saying, is that the only reason 2049 is better is because of the original.
Yeah.
Like because we know, like, for example, Terminator 2 is not better because Terminator happened. Terminator 2 is better because it's just a phenomenal action film.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like T2 could have been the first Terminator and it would still have been phenomenal.
I'm probably one of the few that likes T1 more than T2, and no, I don't think T2 is a bad movie.
So
Hey, I take that as a win. You said it's not a bad movie.
exactly,
Wow.
and you didn't say is the one that you have the least problem with. So well done.
You
But-
are not gonna let the Avengers
It's-
You were a
review
meme
it
in
in
that
a,
episode, man.
you
We're not gonna
keep-
let it go.
You keep showing up, it's gonna keep happening.
That was such a nice statement. You could have fooled me thinking Isaac's trying to get his citizenship.
Oh my. But yeah, it's one of those things. I agree with you. Like, if it wasn't because the first one is so good, that's why we're able to relish in all the great things that Denis accomplished in that sequel.
Yeah, I'd argue Denny Villeneuve, the director, Denny himself, probably wouldn't be where he is without Blade Runner. Like, that's how influential it was with movies like Arrival, his entire filmography. You can feel that a little bit, and it's like Ridley Scott and Blade Runner ushered in a new generation of filmmakers that are drawing from that, and they're improving upon it.
Right. And I have a theme. I have an idea that I want to bounce off you guys in a little bit. But Isaac, your thoughts on the question that Landon put to the group. Is 2049 better?
yes, and I do. And until I rewatched today, even though I think it's better, maybe it's because it's a foundational film. I got more appreciation for the first one after I rewatched it today.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yep.
Because I like the first movie more now, but I can even with that in mind, I can say that the sequel is better.
Right.
You
And
all feel exactly how I do. I very much feel that same way of this movie. It is hard to overstate how much of a foundation it is. Even more than like Avengers was. The Avengers kind of had something to build off of.
Yeah, for
This had a little bit of a book that not a lot of people knew about. I mean, some people say it's a dick, but it turned it into its own thing, and it became such a foundation for everything that has come after. That the fact that 2049 exists at all is testament to how good.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
It became it like you said, it's instrumental, right? When I think of sci-fi, I think of Blade Runner. Just like when I think of fantasy, I think of Lord of the Rings. That's
Right.
how important it is to its genre. it's tied with Dune essentially for what I think of when I think of sci-fi, which is a pretty big feat.
And Dune,
Huge feat.
is. But the funny thing is, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. I haven't. I'm gonna say it. I haven't seen Dune, and the reason I haven't seen it is because whenever I want to have the courage to see it, and I kind of don't want to see it yet, and it doesn't really. It's not my something that's drawing me, but I know I have to, because if not, the cinematic gods will.
I can see the frustration in Landon's eyes right now.
No, but it's gonna happen because I can agree with Mike's statement even without having watched seen Dune, because it's two different kinds of sci-fi. It's two different branches of that overwhelming and interesting genre of storytelling. And like books like Androids That Dream, it's that cyberpunk genre that was ushered in by books like that. That and in cinema form, Blade Runner is pretty much the one that put that cyberpunk style and feel and aesthetic front and center. And we've seen that kind of style explored in so many different genres across the board, languages, countries, and still to this day. I wanted to say that when I rewatched both of them back to back, and I find it so amazing how seamless the transition between the first and the sequel is. Like, I go to the sequel and I don't feel out of place. I feel that this is that world that I saw. Like, if that world that I saw in 2019, 2019 as in the world Blade Runner, the year that movie takes place, yes, that's what this world will be looked like 30 years after. It makes sense that it looks this way, this deteriorated, and the way they acknowledge the fallout and how it looks different, has like different areas. It's interesting how it doesn't, how Blade Runner stops feeling dated once you see 2049. It is so
Yeah.
interesting.
It is a remarkable. The first film, because to be honest, they're both those kinds of movies. I could talk about both of them all. But the final cut, what makes the final cut so good compared to this sequel is it really does a great job of foundationally asking the question, what does it mean to be? And it does this so well. The whole movie is crafted around this narrative, and it almost plays out as a mystery. What does it mean to be? You start finding that out as it plays out, and that's a question that I think everybody's asked at some. What is my existence?
Right.
And
What does it mean to exist?
what does it mean to exist? Deckard is asking this question the entire.
Right.
And the way that Rachel is revealed as a replicant immediately throws him off because she passes his test just fine. He can't detect with his test that she is a replicant at all, and that starts this whole psychological battle with Deckard throughout the entire movie. And as you start seeing the movie play out, and the relationship with the villain, and the relationship with can't think of his name, the big tycoon guy,
Tyrell.
Tyrell. Yeah, I couldn't think of Tyrell's name, but as the relationship with Tyrell in this world plays out, this movie gets deep really quick. It stops being just a cop movie, and it turns into a very deep piece of philosophy fiction.
Let's jump in and talk about the themes of this film, because I think that's part of me wants to debate you on a fact that you threw out there that I disagree with, but I'm not going to do that because we got to talk about the themes of the film. Damn it! But let's talk about the themes of the film. You mentioned about the idea of existence and what it is to be human, right? And what I love about this film, that it's in the surface because they don't really pay so too much attention to it. Like the book goes into much detail in terms of these ideas, but I might bring some stuff from the book to perspective on the changes made, but that's not neither here or there right now in the conversation. But why do they make replicants? Why do they make androids? And the fact that the reason for this is to replace slave labor. It's so interesting because you got to think about it. This is society, of course. We got to think that this is the future of America, right? Slavery has been abolished, but we need workers to mine the colonies in Mars and through the stars. But we're not going to put humans and expose them to these conditions. We're going to create these human replicas to take their place. And then that's so it talks so it has a conversation the movie attempts to have a conversation on slavery. And the idea of these androids leaving the Mars colonies, and the only way they can leave is by killing their masters. That's Underground Railroad. That's them trying to find a way to freedom. But we sometimes call them villains because they take lives. But then you have the whole situation about they just want to live. They don't want to live for someone else. They want to live lives of their own. And the idea that because they have existed or they've been created, then you have the idea of God, you have the idea of purpose. There's so many different things that come to the conversation. That's why I mentioned that this movie is so dense, because it presents all these little things, but it presents them in a way that's so subtle that it doesn't bottleneck the story, right? I feel that this movie plays like a great RPG game, which, you know how when you play like a good RPG, you're following the main character's story, right? But as you walk through his path and go through his journey, you can find books or newspapers or articles around the world, right? That if you want to know more, you can dig in. So you can sit down and watch this film and want to focus on Roy's story, and you walk away with so much information that is just in the background. You want to know more about Rachel, there's so much stuff in the background. You can watch this film and just focus on Deckard, and there's so much going on in the background. And here's the thing, guys, which I was surprised when I noticed it. The final cut is like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not even like, it's not this like 2 hour and a half craziness like 2049, which, by the way, that doesn't hurt the film at all. But this is just like an hour and a half romp with all these ideas going against each other. It is so dense and so interesting. I want to shut up because I've talked a lot. But
I want to add one thing, and then I want to give Mike and Isaac a chance to chime in. But
yeah.
I want to amend my statement, because you are right. The villains are not truly the villains. The true villain.
That wasn't the point, but that's fine.
Well,
I want you guys to just talk that out then, because
it's gonna
Okay.
happen.
Same.
I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna bring it up. Don't worry. Go.
okay, we will talk it out.
It's gonna happen.
The true villain of this movie is Tyrell. The antagonist,
Interesting.
Roy being the antagonist,
Mm-hmm.
is because he kills.
Right.
But he is
That's why
also
he's
the-
viewed as a murdering machine. And it goes back to that line from Deckard. A machine is helpful until it's a hazard.
Well,
And it's talking
True.
about the replicants. And that's the human view. Not because the machine itself is bad. That is the human perspective.
yeah, but Roy killing Tyrell makes perfect sense, because, hi, you've made me to die, you've made me to be a slave. I don't want you to do this to anyone else again. I'm gonna kill you. Makes perfect sense. Roy is the most human character of the whole movie, and yet he's the villain. The antagonist, I should say. But
Mm-hmm.
the true villain of this movie is Tyrell, and that is partly because the whole slavery idea. It's a post uh, post industrialism idea. It's what do we do when our robots don't service us the way that we want them to anymore? Well, we make them more in our image, um, and that's the ideas you might expect from places like that. Um, you know, you want to see the world be a better place. Blade Runner is, well, what if that better place took a different, the only way you get characters with a level of grit and the level of um, rawness to them that the story's trying to tell is in that post industrial world where we're no longer asking the big questions of how do we how do we advance, how do we feed people. Now we're asking the questions of how do we play God? How do we go beyond our, and in doing so, the human characters lose a lot of it.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Do you the idea of what it means to be human? We got to say that I think Landon and I can agree that that's one of our favorite themes, and how that theme is explored. Do you have a theme in particular, Mike, or something that stands out that's the through line that you most enjoy in the way it's explored?
I mean, personally, I'm right there with you guys. I'm gonna pull an Isaac and say you took the words out of my mouth, because
Damn it, Brandon.
that push and pull, though, right, of what it means to be human is explored through pretty much every single character that's on screen. And I really love the nuance with Deckard's character specifically, because he's going through all of this, learning, questioning, but then there's small moments, right, where his eyes are reflective, like the replicants. And so you're just sitting there like, is he human? Is he questioning his own humanity? And so that kind of push and pull between what he believes to be true and what he's discovering to be true, that's my personal favorite thematic element of Blade Runner, the final cut, simply because, again, coming off of the original film, the original version of this movie, it is such a different experience, and so it just blows my mind how nuanced his story is. So for me, I'm right there with you guys personally.
Isaac, do you have a favorite theme or idea that this film explores?
I will just mirror Mike and what he said right now, but I will put in something different here. The whole speak that Rutger Hauer's character has at the end before he dies.
Yes.
That's supposedly improv, 100% improv. And which makes that scene even greater in my book, because that speak before he dies makes that whole death scene even more powerful, considering why he died and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And the fact that he saved Deckard also makes, like Deckard said, did he truly care for life after all, to some extent?
One of the things that I love, I think it would be a good idea to probably go character by character, at least main ones, right? And you brought Roy Beatty, which is the leader of the 4 replicants that fled Mars, and who is presented as the antagonist. And one of the things that I find interesting, I find it funny that you mentioned that it was improv. So it makes me think: was it improv by Rutger or by Roy? Did that android think about that all himself? No. But
So little history on that. They wrote a much longer monologue, and the day of the shoot, he actually trimmed down the monologue to about a quarter, about a third of what it actually was. Left out a lot of bits and pieces and made it more like a human would actually talk. And then Rucker Hauer actually added
That line.
the bit at the very end about tears and rain, time to die. And that's, to be honest, that is the part people remember because it's so powerful.
So great.
So great.
But he added that to that. That was entirely improv on his part. Oh wait, we're having a
I find that character very interesting, not only because he led, these androids to do this, these other replicants to do this, because you got to think about it. He was a militarized unit. That's why he was apt at hand-to-hand combat, used strength to his advantage as opposed to the other ones. But he actually was a leader for this group. He led this group to freedom. And he actually cared about those in his group. And to think that what made him this living figure was the fact that he was a well of experience. Because that's the whole point of his argument at the end, right? He's talking about, I have seen things that you wouldn't believe, right? So he's talking about experience. And he's talking about the idea that the fact that he understands that he exists or that he is alive is because he has experienced it. And it makes me think, when you look at this world that the Blade Runner movie takes place, it's a very dead place. It's a place that's full of isolation, where everybody's like in their own little world, but together, but isolated. And it's interesting that we see a person like Roy's character in contrast with Deckard. Like, Deckard is a human that has a job, that has, but he kind of hates his life. And something that you can't see in the movie, but if you read the book, you can kind of deduce the reason why his apartment is as trash as it is, apart from that he probably has a drinking problem, is that in the book, he's married. So you can probably assume that whoever he was with left him, which would explain why there's a piano there and he can't play it, amongst other things. Like that apartment kind of feels of an apartment of someone that apartment was lived in by more than one person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you get that feel. So this is a person that's out of his rope. When he's pulled in to be a Blade Runner again, he knows, I don't do this anymore. This is not, and there's a reason why, because you got to think about it. At what point does he keep killing these replicants or retiring them, and starts feeling like, but they act like me. They think like me. They hurt like me. And then, of course, this investigation, everything he learns with Rachel, and then you get to Roy, and you find out the idea of experience as a evidence of life, which makes you think about a lot of people. Like, we all been to situations where we felt that we wasted our life because we made decisions that took us away from experiences. I felt it in my life, and it's just an interesting conversation. Go, Landon.
That's a excellent segue to the big question everyone asks about this.
Oh boy.
You made a point about his apartment. Hold back. And a lot of folks ask, is Deckard a replicant? I want to hear y'all's thoughts before I share my own.
Mike.
Yes. I would say yes, because I feel like, one, thematically, it's kind of set up there. But two, didn't Ridley Scott confirm that he was a replicant?
Ridley Scott said that in his mind, he's a replicant.
So I'm aligning my thoughts with Ridley Scott's mind.
But the final cut is not the director's cut.
No,
But then again, it's. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there to make you think that he is.
there's enough there to make you think
Yeah.
he is.
That he could be. That he could be, right? Unlike the protagonist of 2049, which we know from the get-go that he is indeed a replicant,
Yeah.
which is an interesting twist. Isaac. Did we lose him?
Isaac will be right back.
So, after these... Okay, so Landon, do you want me to go first before you dunk yours?
No, go ahead, go ahead. I will give everyone a chance.
Okay, so I don't want to think he's a replicant. Not because because I can see the items like the whole unicorn isn't it alludes to the idea of planted memories, the whole thing with the eyes at times, the way that he's treated by the police chief is kind of like dismissive, not like a person would talk to another person, but like a person would talk to a baby or someone, like, you know what I mean? So there is a lot of the fact that we don't see him coming or going, kind of. We just find him in the middle of the city. He's never home, and for some reason. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things there. But to me, the arguments that the story wants to make lose a lot of weight if he's a replicant. That's the way I see it. Because, especially after reading the book also, because the book doesn't go out of his way to say that he isn't, but it goes out of the way to say that the argument is that this is a man trying to find what's real in his life. And the fact that he's human and interacting with replicants, those are the kind of things that bring up the fact that, so this is what real, this is what matters. And it's him handling that question. So I think the drama of the character of Rick Deckard is more interesting by him being human and having to deal with the replicants. And that's my decision. That's why I see it that way. Yeah.
So Isaac, I'm curious. Do you think Deckard is a replicant?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I don't really know because I can see argument both way.
So we have 3 opinions on this. This is rather interesting. So I guess I get to be the icebreaker. I'm with Mike. He's absolutely a replicant in this movie. I don't think that because of what Ridley Scott says. I think that because everything that happens with that unicorn is that is a subplot, because Gaff is his handler, and Gaff knows about the unicorn. Deckard is a the movie is trying to tell a different story than I realized they're trying to change things around. And when I first watched Blade Runner, the reason I had watched it actually is because someone I knew was like, "Hey, is Deckard a replicant?" Yes or no? I have to watch the movie. So I left the movie feeling he absolutely is, but I don't mind. And I really, I would like a version of Blade Runner where he's not. You can still watch it, but here is why I know for a fact he's a replicant. The relationship he has with Rachel is not a relationship that someone who has experienced life before is going to have. People have weird kind of relationships all the time.
Please elaborate.
His relationship with Rachel starts off a little bit strange. It starts off as they meet each other, and then every time they start encountering each other, it's just a little bit like more tense. She's running away from things because of her life, the mysteries of her life. Uh, he keeps running into her, and it culminates in this love scene in the apartment that has been much talked about, because that scene is, shall I say, very, very physical
Mm-hmm.
and not romantic.
Okay.
And the question has always been asked: how can these two characters be in love and them have that type of relationship? This is clearly a clear dramatic experience, or clear dramatic choice by the director to make this romantic scene so physical, so um, almost not human,
Almost robotic, right?
almost robotic. It's a clear
This is
clear
interesting.
choice, and yet you clearly leave the movie understanding that they have a love and appreciation for each other. Clearly, that is clear in 2049. Um, the only way I think that scene works is if they are replicants. Both of them are replicants, experiencing the world, going through the world, experiencing things they've never felt and experienced before. Thematically, it fits all the themes that the movie has already covered up to that point, and thematically, it fits both.
Yeah, so I was just doing a little digging while you were talking, Landon. I agree with everything you said. I just want to remind everybody again, we see him have like the yellow eye glow thing in one moment that all the replicants have. We've seen in photographs he and Rachel have like the same house when you look at their childhoods, so it could be implanted memories using the same background. And like again, everything you said with the unicorns, I just think that is enough evidence for me, especially when you factor in Ridley Scott told Harrison Ford before they filmed 2049, this movie only works if you're a replicant. I need you to know that in that film you were a replicant. So for me, that's all I need, personally.
So, so here's why I disagree. No, and a lot of that is interesting, and I don't. It's like I agree with both of you, but I see a lot of these things differently. Um, yes, I've noticed the eye thing, and that was interesting, but you only see it in the first film. Um,
I mean, that's what
yes,
we're talking about, though.
no, true. Um,
But the second film, I will say, I know we're not really lingering on the
well,
second
the
film,
second film goes out of its way to not express whether he is or not.
but it also goes out of its way to give all the hints of why. Oh, everything that was in the first movie, this might be the same thing in this movie. It still does the hints, but it does the hints more with another character in the movie. I'm not going to spoil who that character is in this
Yeah,
pod,
yeah,
but I think everybody knows who I'm talking about.
yeah.
There's another character in the movie, and they keep dropping all the hints for why.
Yeah.
See, so but here's the whole thing with Deckard. The reason why, and again, here's where part of the drama that I enjoy of the film goes away if he was replicant to me. It's because the best sci-fi is mostly with the interaction of a human with everything else going on around him, right? I'm not saying there's not good sci-fi that doesn't include humans, but there's always an avatar of humanity in sci-fi stories. And of course, that's kind of the argument that the film's making. Like, does it need to be a human for you to find humanity in a sci-fi story, right? But in that love scene, I see it completely different. I don't see it as two robotic figures having interaction. I see it as a person that knows how affection can be shown, teaching someone that is afraid to show affection because they've never experienced it before. showing it to them. Because Harrison is giving her direction because she doesn't know what to do because he's never done it. As opposed to Harrison having gone through that, through wealth of experience, being able to do it.
I agree with that 100%, by the way. But
and
I think it is in a different context, just with
no. And again, the same scene works with both explanations. But that's the way I saw it. That's the way I felt it. Because you have a person that, because of his interaction with the replicants, remembers what it is to be human and what to value in life, to want to live again, right? Or to live to the fullest or whatever. Like what matters to live to the fullest is holding to what you hold dear and whatever, which towards the end of the film, Rachel becomes that person that he wants to hold dear, right? And wants to live with. Because he's not being chased because he's a replicant. He's being chased because he's harboring Rachel. And if we ever saw instances that he's being chased because he's a replicant that goes rogue, then I would understand that. But that's not what happens. We know that Rachel is always the reason why he's running. Rachel is the only reason he's running, not because of his own self. If he was a replicant, then there would be records of him being a replicant that is running from his duties. And we never see him kill a person, which is really the main reason why, Not only that, depending on the replicant, a replicant cannot have its own life. That was something that came about a lot later, but that's a different story. But that's the way I see those scenes, is Harrison seeing the yearning of this replicant, Rachel, of wanting to live life as much as possible and express love and understand it, and him teaching her, which to a degree, it's hard for someone that doesn't experience. Again, without experience, you can't teach it. So where did he get that experience? Because memories are not enough, which again goes back into the argument of experience, emotion, and all that stuff. That's how I see those scenes. That's why I feel, just like you feel, that scene proves that he's a replicant for you. Those kind of scenes
for me is
prove that it's not.
No, I'm of the page. Oh, go ahead.
And to finish, here's my disagreement I'm going to bring it up. The disagreement from the beginning. Rachel did fail the Void contest. That's the point. She failed it. That's how he was able to find out that she was a replicant. And the reason she failed it is because of the lack, because they don't explain this. They kind of murmur it, but they don't go into huge detail. But the point of the Void contest is to be able to measure emphatic and empathy responses. Are replicants, humans have natural ways of emitting empathetic responses? They either blush, dilation, reaction. And one of the things that for replicants, it's very hard. That's why when you hear Dave Holden, which, by the way, Easter egg, he is indeed the detective that is hurt in the book. So he talks about the Void contest, and he says, we need your answers. How quickly you answer is important. Because you got to think about it. Humans will react empathically automatically. Unless they're sociopaths, right? But the same thing goes with replicants. They can't react as fast as humans, which is one of the degrees of the Void contest. So when you go through Rachel's, because she's such an advanced nexus, it takes more time to iron out the test. But by the end of it, he was able to definitively know that she wasn't a replicant, which is why he's able to say to Tyrell, does she know? And Tyrell was amazed that he figured it out.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a very cool interpretation of it. My interpretation was always that she passed the test. He figured it out because of the eyes and because they were in a room. Yeah, they were in a room of replicated beings, like the little owl.
Right. Right.
I always figured that was how he figured it out.
Right.
The clues were
Right. Well, and the
more
idea
more
of the
important
void
than the test.
contest is that they do the questions, and over the questions, the system will measure the subject's empathic response, and from there he makes a like the actual Blade Runner makes that determination. For which is why, for example, when you present Leon, which is the guy that you see at the beginning, that first replicant, his unwillingness to answer or knowing how to answer. That's how he knew he was going to be found out. But the difference between him and Rachel, which is why it was so hard, is because Rachel had memories implanted. So she had a lot more answers that felt genuine as opposed to Leon that didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
For what
feel
it's
like it
worth,
makes
I
sense.
took it Brandon's way too.
And I've never looked at it in that light, but it makes perfect sense. That does make perfect sense to me. She, but just barely by the skin of her teeth, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
This is what makes this such a great film and a great sci-fi film. Like, sci-fi films are not Avengers films in terms of we're all celebrating about the same thing. Sci-fi films, the best ones, create this dialogue of ideas, which is why it's such a powerful genre for humanity. And yes, I'm preaching. No, but does it make sense, guys? Am I making too big of a deal of this, or is
I
that
don't
the
think you
point?
are.
Or is that the
I
point
don't
of the
think you
best
are.
sci-fi? Right? It's not about agreeing, or it's about the disagreement and how much it triggers the imagination.
Like
Right?
our disagreement, so to speak, over the love scene is actually full agreement on my part. Because
Yeah.
everything you said about it is 100% accurate. I just think that it is in the context of those memories, those thoughts were implanted.
Yeah.
Where yours is of the opinion of he lived these experiences.
So he's teaching them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that it's the same interpretation, but it's through different eyes,
Right.
and that says a lot about what this movie brings. It says a lot about the fact that people still debate if Deckard is a replicant.
And it's one of
Because
those things where, sorry, but it's just one of those things where it also doesn't really matter, right?
True.
Because we all walk away loving the story. Like
Yes.
out of everything you said, Brandon, no offense, I still 100% think this guy's a replicant.
No,
But
that's fine.
but yeah, right. It doesn't affect
Yeah.
how we experience the themes in this movie, and I just love how, from two different perspectives, we're saying it's a theme about what it means to be human, and Landon and I's perspective is that's the point, is he's not human, right? And he's discovering that and figuring that out. And yours is the complete opposite, but we still get to the same endpoint,
Right.
which is just why this script in this film is incredible.
yeah, it's the same identical endpoint, but a lot of it has to do with how you're interpreting. Science fiction is one of the best genres at this because it is a thinking literature. It
Right.
leaves you to think about what is on the page more than a romance novel is going to do or a classic is going to do. You're reading some dystopian fiction book.
Right.
It's doing its own thing separate from those genres because sci-fi is all about our relationship as humans with the environment around us.
Yeah.
Usually that's in the form of computers and robots. Sometimes it's like Dune, and it's in relation to how we don't use those things.
Right.
Science
And-
fiction can be in many forms,
Right.
but it asks those fundamental questions of who am I? What does it mean to exist? What does it mean to live?
True. And I love, and as someone that read the book, I find it so interesting how one piece of literature can inspire a lot of different things and what this movie is, because this movie is its own animal. And I invite you guys to read the book because it's a lot. It's a dense read. I mean, not as dense as Dune, but um, but it's enjoyable, especially when you know Blade Runner, because you can see all the differences and the different questions and the way it asks them. Now, I don't think there's much to say about the character of Rachel beyond what we talk in regards to the relationship with Deckard, right? But can we agree that apart from Deckard, Roy is the most interesting character in this film? Um, and I do find interesting the fact that even though Roy ceases to exist, right, towards the end of the film, um, I do find interesting how he evolves and how he grows into a different person. Um, I kind of walked away after watching this ending. Right, is that as a replicant, right? He lived his life as someone that would do and would be what others call him or what others tell him to be, right? And for the longest time, because of the decisions he had to make, he was called a murderer. And it wasn't until the end that he made the decision to live by his own terms yet again and be a better person. Understanding that, which is, I think, is the whole point. Going back to the Void Conf, right? The idea that can an android present an empathic response, and that is what we see at the end. He empathized. He was able to value life, because that's the whole thing about, or the idea of androids, is the fact that because they're they are machines incapable of showing empathy, they are selfish by design, so they can only think of themselves. So if everybody's falling and dying on a plane, they're going to think about themselves and no one else. They're going to worry about their survival. And the fact that he's able to save Deckard at the end shows him showing empathy, which is why it's such a breakthrough for that character. And that's why I find him so interesting. Because from a madman running around and breaking and pulling out the Shining in different scenes, like breaking walls with his head and all that stuff, he becomes this philosopher towards the end, talking about the meaning of life. And like there's a breakthrough of empathy in his heart. Does that make sense? Which, to me, did you guys ever were you guys able to see that thread on that character to the film? Do you have a particular moment that you enjoy?
I'll do you one better. I think he is the most interesting character. I also think that he's already reached that level where he feels empathy at the beginning of the film, but it's not expressed until he's met with the fate of his own mortality. And I think the reason he uses it on Deckard is because Deckard's trying to kill it. And he realizes, I don't have time left. This is my last chance to make a mark. And he does it. And that's why that scene is so raw. It's not about just that little time to die thing, and then he's gone. It's about, this is it. I don't have anything else after this. And you get that moment is so raw, so well done. I don't think the movie works without it. That's how important that scene is to the time.
And it changes the tone of the film, because when you compare his death, because all the other deaths, we're going to call them deaths, all the other deaths of replicants occur by someone else's hands, right? And they're all hunted down. They're all shot and killed, right? They're all retired, right? But when it comes to Roy, he's not retired. And it's a reflection of what life is in a nutshell. I mean, think about it. In 4 years, he feels that he's lived so much that he wants to live more. And when he's faced with his mortality, he's just embracing that to the point that the point he's making is like, when I die, all my memories go with me. And what we're saying is, he's not saying I'm shutting down. Is that I'm dying and everything goes with me. My experience, my wealth of life, of information will leave, which is what happens when anybody ceases to exist, unless they leave a legacy. And that's the legacy that he left with Deckard, which is why Deckard is so tuned in by the end of it to save Rachel's life.
100%.
Well said.
So good, man.
Well said.
Landon, you and I have talked way too much. We should just go and let them talk. I mean, it was gonna happen, right?
We both love this movie, so not to say that Mike and Isaac don't,
Yeah.
but Brandon and I both love this movie.
The funny thing is that before we started recording, we said that, okay, we need to take it easy so Victoria don't become too angry at Landon.
Yeah,
Landon.
Backstage
Wow.
information, guys. We literally were on here. It's like, okay, we're gonna take a back seat because these guys are just gonna go with it, and we just sitting here like, yeah. So very intentional, but it's a great conversation. We're just here listening. It's awesome, and everything you guys are saying, I agree, 95%.
Is that 5%?
I need to hear this 5% concern.
Deckard is a replicant. That's the 5%.
And my 5% is that he's not. So now we like to do this with every show, so we have to do it here. Isaac, favorite scene or moment?
The ending monologue for Roy.
Mike.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Probably Harrison Ford putting on a fake voice, being a detective. I love detective stories, and that moment. That's the moment where it's just like, this guy is a terrible. Like, if that's the thing you can convince me he's not a replicant, is that this guy is not great at this. He's just fumbling around like Harrison Ford does.
Well, you got to think about. It's funny that you say that because replicants have their one personality.
Yeah,
they don't know. You can say they haven't lived enough to pretend. Because the other thing is, one of the things that also in the book is more detailed, but there's different models of replicants, right? And like, you got to assume that the one that he goes to see is a pleasure model, which is why it has that particular history. But I probably learned how to fight because of Roy, which are interesting connections that you would make in that.
Yeah, so it's a moment of levity, but it's also a really just strong character for Deckard, seeing how he handles the situation.
Especially to think that he has to. People can't find out why he's there,
right?
Because the replicant's going to flee. You know, he's not just a regular cop; he's a Blade Runner. Favorite scene, Mr. Landon.
Same thing Isaac said. That scene is fundamental in the genre. I can't not name it. I will say that if I had to pick a second and third favorite, the
a 2-for-1 special.
In the apartment. Oh yeah.
The what you said?
This is definitely one of those movies that gets a 2-for-1.
Nice.
Or a 3-for-1.
3-for-1.
The love scene in the apartment is a definite number 2.
Okay.
Again, iconic.
Yeah.
Third favorite is honestly the scene with Pris in the apartment, in the other dude's apartment. That whole fight scene is creepy.
Yes.
Creepy.
Yes.
And
it's like they went out of his way. They went out of their way to like, yeah, she's a machine.
Yes.
And she's like glitching out and getting all weird. Yeah.
She's the most machine of them all.
Yeah, for sure. Honorable mention for me goes to the weird narration they put over the director's cut, theatrical cut. It's just so weird and off-putting, and I hate it.
Interesting. Is it Ridley Scott doing the narration or?
It's Harrison Ford, and you can tell that Harrison just gets the narration last second. He's just reading it in one take. That's how bad it is.
Oh no, and he has like one of these like droning voices, right?
Yes.
Like it can be like monotone and just. Well,
That's
it's either that or Christopher Walken.
I
Well,
have to,
I
I
say-
have to ask Landon this because I'm just curious. We all know that Harrison Ford was not the first choice for both Indiana Jones and Han Solo. Was it the same deal with Deckard? Do you know about that? I'm just curious.
Pretty sure he was the first choice for this one.
Okay, yes, I just had to ask.
So, I don't know. I don't have a favorite scene. I mean, I love the Roy scene. It is the most powerful scene in the film, right?
For sure.
But I like the fact that the movie has a lot of procedural scenes. You see Deckard, the cop detective, being a cop and a detective. So I do like that. Like, this is a person of intellect that's doing this and doing these questions. But I don't know. I just like being in. I like being. I don't have. I can't say I have a favorite scene because I like the presentation as a whole. And I know that
Can't
sounds.
believe you.
And I know that sounds like a cop out.
I can't believe you had us answer this question. You didn't have your own response. That is just.
I know.
So-
That's my job.
So I'm gonna give Brandon a scene.
But I gotta say, I think because I don't want to say the same was Isak, but I do agree that's one of the. It is the strongest scene of the film. But I don't know. The void comm test is a good scene as well.
Which one?
Like the void comm test, like the main one with Rachel. The idea of the process, and this is from someone that, and I'm seeing it under a different light because I've read the book, but I also
get it, man. You read the manga.
No. But the funny thing is, I also read the graphic novel, so I'm seeing like how he drew it and how it's. I don't know. It's interesting. But
What's
I
funny
like that too.
is I was
like
going to
that
say
too.
that scene, that void comp scene. Yeah, I was going to be like, Brandon, I'm going to suggest a favorite for you.
Yes.
But like everything about that scene, including like when Rachel walks out, that dress, and just looks at them, and is like, "Okay, go ahead and start." Now it's such a great scene. The whole scene is.
Yeah, it's great.
Amazing.
Okay, guys. I think we talked a lot about Blade Runner. We talked a lot about Blade Runner. We talked a lot through Blade Runner, and we talked about around Blade Runner. I think we talked enough. The shadow has risen.
We have talked so much. I'm literally gonna dream about Electric Sheep tonight.
My man. But then again, does that mean you're a replicant? I guess we'll never know. Look at his eyes.
To be continued.
We are going to be covering, so you guys know, we are going to be covering 2049 at some point, and that's going to be a very interesting conversation. Hopefully we get the same band together so we can talk more Blade Runner, because this world is amazing, and you guys should check it out if you haven't. If you haven't checked it out and you listen to this, I'm sorry, you know everything now. But you should definitely check out the book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Comixology has the graphic novel version where you can read it for free if you have an account. But also there's a bunch of comic books that have spawned a bunch of miniseries, animes, a bunch of different things in this world. And we got to thank Philip K. Dick and Ridley Scott for bringing it to us. So let's start signing off because this Take Up the Shadow After is officially done. Isak, where can people find you, man?
Well, you can find my work at Over Entertainment, and you can find me over at Emblemaniac, and on Twitter, and you can find the anime and manga pod that yours truly, Brandon and Mike, is doing on the Amateur Taco Pod on Twitter, and the Amateur Talk on every podcast site and YouTube over besides Podbean over at At well, that's about it.
Wherever you get your podcasts. Yes.
Landon Beall, where can you bake your stories?
Oh, you can find me at Storybake HQ on Twitter, storybake.net. I'm also on YouTube at Storybake. And on Twitter, I'm at the Bellman. That's Beall, because my ancestors couldn't spell. Pretty much anywhere. I work on a lot of different podcasts. You can check out. What am I on right now? I don't even remember. But check out all those places. You'll hear.
It's in the description, guys. You're good.
It's in the description.
It's on there.
It's in the thing.
Mike, the thing man.
Yeah, I'll do the thing just like Julie. So you can find me at Novice Cinephile on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok, and The Novice Cinephile on Instagram because someone sniped my name. You can also find me at youtube.com/Novice Cinephile, where we've got YouTube Shorts, YouTube video reactions to trailers, anime. You can also, like Isak said, find me over at the Amateur Otaku Podcast. And of course, here, the chatter after. You probably are watching this on YouTube. And if you're not, check out the YouTube channel. It's great. It's a fun time. But if you're listening to us on Spotify, there's also the video version there. So make sure you check that out as well. And yeah, that's about it. Also, you can check out my work at collider.com.
The pure sweetness. And you can find me at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Twitter, at the Scarlet Fan 52 on Instagram, and at the Scarlet Fan 52 on TikTok, even though I have no idea what the hell I'm doing there. Have it awesome, guys. Stay clean, stay safe, keep enjoying movies. See ya.
See ya.